3 days before Christmas, after a 16-hour shift taking 911 calls, I came home to find my entire life stacked in plastic bins on the snowy sidewalk. At first, I thought my family had finally decided I was no longer useful to them. By Christmas morning, I would learn something worse. They had not thrown me out in a moment of anger. They had planned it. My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 32, an emergency dispatcher in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the note taped to my parents' front door said, "We can't keep supporting you anymore. It's time for you to become independent." I stood there in my uniform jacket, boots sinking into slush, reading that sentence twice because my brain refused to accept the words. Supporting me. For 3 years, I had been paying the mortgage on that house. The porch light was on. The curtains moved. Behind me, a cracked blue storage bin had tipped sideways, spilling my winter sweaters into the snow. My old laptop bag sat on top of a garbage bag full of shoes. Someone had put my framed dispatcher certification face down on the concrete like it embarrassed them. I knocked once, then again. The deadbolt did not sound familiar when it turned. It was a new lock. My mother, Susan Morgan, opened the door only 4 inches. Warm air rushed past her shoulder, carrying the smell of cinnamon candles and the pot roast I had put in the slow cooker before leaving for work that morning. "Mom," I said, my voice hoarse from 16 hours of other people's emergencies. "What is this?" She didn't look at the bins. She looked at the street, like she was worried a neighbor might see. "Claire, don't make this harder." "Where's Dad?" "Resting." "He knew?" Her mouth tightened. That was my answer. For 3 years, since my father's accident on Route 28 left him with a crushed pelvis and permanent nerve damage, I had slept in the small back room beside the laundry. I had worked overtime until my eyes burned. I had paid $2,184 a month toward the mortgage, $740 for his physical therapy, the gas bill, the water bill, and whatever prescription wasn't covered that week. My older brother, Ryan, sent inspirational texts from his failing restaurant and called it helping. I was the one who changed Dad's bandages when Mom said she couldn't look. I was the one who learned the insurance codes. I was the one who kept a spreadsheet called Morgan House Expenses on a laptop now sitting in a snowbank. And my mother had the nerve to say, "We can't keep supporting you." "The house was sold," she said quietly. I stopped breathing for a second. "What?" "The closing happened yesterday. We didn't want to upset you before the holidays." The room behind her was glowing with Christmas lights. I could see our stocking still hanging from the mantel. Mine was gone. "You sold the house I've been paying for?" "Your father needs treatment. Ryan's business has been struggling. We had to make choices." There it was. Ryan. Always Ryan. Ryan Morgan, 36, owner of a restaurant that had been 1 good month away from turning around since 2019. Ryan, who borrowed money with tears in his voice and posted steak dinners online 2 days later. Ryan, who called me Miss Responsible like it was an insult and still let me cover his car insurance one winter because Mom said stress made him drink. I looked past her toward the hallway. "Dad!" I called. My mother's face changed. Not fear exactly. Control. "He can't handle this right now." "He can't handle seeing his daughter thrown outside?" "You're not being thrown outside. You're 32 years old. It's time you stood on your own 2 feet. Snow landed on my eyelashes. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold. "My paycheck goes into the family account," I said. "I have $917 in checking because you told me we were paying down Dad's hospital balance." She sighed like I was being childish. and we appreciate everything you've done. Where am I supposed to sleep tonight? She glanced back into the warm house. Then she said the sentence that split something clean in me. That isn't our responsibility anymore. The door closed before I could answer. The new lock clicked. For a long moment, I stood there under the fake wreath I had bought at Target for $19.99, listening to my mother walk away. That was the first mistake. Not kicking me out, not changing the locks, not even leaving my clothes in the snow. Their first mistake was forgetting that emergency dispatchers are trained to stay calm when everything falls apart. I took one breath, then another. I started moving. I dragged the bins to the curb under the porch overhang. I opened my banking app with fingers so numb I had to tap twice. $917.42. My next paycheck wasn't due until December 30th, and even that was scheduled for direct deposit into the shared family account. I changed it from my phone right there in the snow. Then I called my friend Mara. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, then went silent when she heard my voice.
Claire, what happened? My parents kicked me out. What? I need a couch. Just tonight. There was a pause, then a baby crying in the background. Mara had twins, a 2-bedroom apartment, and her mother-in-law sleeping in the living room for Christmas week. Oh my God, she whispered. Claire, I don't have room. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. It's okay. It wasn't okay. I called 3 hotels near Monroeville. Full. One room left at $289 plus tax. Card required, no cash hold. My car, a 12-year-old Ford Focus with a dead alternator, was sitting at O'Malley's Auto 2 miles away, waiting for a repair I had postponed because Dad needed a new shower chair. At 8:17 p.m., a neighbor named Mrs. Keaton stepped onto her porch across the street. She was 70, widowed, always wore red lipstick, even to get the mail. Claire, she called, why are your things outside? I almost lied. Instead, I said, they sold the house. Her eyes moved to the door, then to the bins. No, sweetheart, she said softly. They didn't. I looked up. She crossed the street slowly, gripping the rail when she reached the curb. The for sale sign was never up. Movers came yesterday, but not for the whole house, just boxes from the basement. A man in a gray truck took papers out with your brother. The cold went deeper than my coat. What papers? I don't know. But your mother told the mailman last week that all financial notices should go to Ryan's restaurant. I thought you knew. I didn't. The truth was already sitting in a file. I just hadn't seen it yet. By 10:30, I was sitting in the vestibule of St. Mark's Church on Penn Avenue with 2 bins, 1 backpack, and a paper cup of coffee a volunteer pressed into my hand. The warming center was full of people who had worse stories than mine, so I swallowed my pride and signed the intake sheet. Name, Claire Morgan. Emergency contact. I left it blank. Permanent address. I stared at that line until the ink blurred. Then, for the first time in my life, I wrote, no permanent address. On Christmas Eve morning, I woke up in a folding chair with my coat over my chest and my phone at 12%. A volunteer named Denise touched my shoulder gently. Claire? I sat up too fast. There's a man at the front desk asking for you. My stomach dropped. Ryan? No, older gentleman, suit. Says his name is Daniel Brooks. I didn't know any Daniel Brooks. He was waiting near the donation table in a dark wool coat, holding a leather briefcase worn soft at the corners. He looked about 65, with silver hair and the careful posture of a man used to delivering news nobody was ready to hear. Ms. Morgan? he asked. Yes? My name is Daniel Brooks. I was your grandfather, Henry Morgan's attorney. I stared at him. My grandfather had been dead for almost 11 years. According to my parents, he had cut us all off long before that. Daniel's eyes softened when he saw my confusion. I've been trying to reach you for months, he said. Mrs. Keaton called me last night. I'd left my card with her when I came looking for you in the spring.
When she saw your belongings outside, she told me what happened. I spent the night calling shelters and warming centers. My eyes burned. Mrs. Keaton had not only noticed, she had remembered. Daniel lowered his voice. Your grandfather believed a day like this might come. Behind him, snow tapped against the church windows like fingernails. What day? Daniel opened the briefcase and removed a thick cream envelope. My name was written across the front in handwriting I had never seen, but somehow recognized. Claire Elaine Morgan. Your grandfather left instructions, he said. If you ever left your parents' household under coercion, became homeless, or were finally living beyond their financial control, I was to locate you immediately. My throat tightened. How would he know that? Daniel looked toward the folding chairs, the donated coats, the line of people waiting for breakfast. Then he said the words that made the room tilt. Because, Claire, he wrote that your family would use you until there was nothing left. And he made sure they couldn't touch what he left behind. Daniel Brooks drove me to his office in Squirrel Hill because I had nowhere else to go, and because the envelope in my lap felt heavier than every bin I had left behind at St. Mark's. His office smelled like old paper, coffee, and radiator heat. There was a small Christmas tree in the corner with no ornaments, just white lights. He took my coat, hung it carefully, and placed a cardboard banker's box on the conference table. Across the lid in black marker, someone had written my name. Claire Elaine Morgan. My hands went cold again. Your grandfather kept a file for you, Daniel said. He updated it until 3 weeks before he died. My parents said he wanted nothing to do with us. Daniel's face did not change, but something in his eyes did. That was not true. He opened the box. Inside were envelopes, stacks of them. Cream, blue, pale green, red Christmas ones with faded stamps. Each had my name on it in the same firm handwriting. Some were addressed to the house I had just been thrown out of. Some were addressed to my high school. One said, for Claire's 16th birthday. There were 63. I picked up the birthday envelope first. It had never been opened. The seal cracked when I slid my thumb under it. Inside was a card with a watercolor bird on the front and a check clipped to it. $2,000. The date on the check was 16 years old. My grandfather had written, My dear Claire, I hear you want to be a nurse, or maybe a lawyer, or maybe something nobody has guessed yet. Whatever you become, make sure it belongs to you. I read that sentence 3 times. My throat hurt so badly I had to press my knuckles against my mouth. Daniel sat quietly. He did not rush me. Good attorneys know when silence is part of the evidence. They told me he forgot us, I whispered. He sent letters every Christmas. Your mother returned most of them. A few were intercepted by your father. The checks were a different problem. I looked up. Daniel pulled out a folder labeled Education Gifts. Henry. And after his death, the trust acting under his written instructions sent several checks for your schooling between 2007 and 2013. Some were returned, some were deposited. Deposited where? He slid one photocopy across the table. The back of the check showed my mother's signature. Under it was another endorsement.
Ryan Morgan. For a second, I heard nothing. Not the radiator, not traffic outside, not Daniel's measured breathing. Ryan had opened his first food truck in 2012, the same year my grandfather sent me $10,000 for community college. I remembered working double shift at the grocery store that year and dropping 2 classes because I couldn't afford the lab fees. I remembered Mom telling me, "Your grandfather had money, Claire, but he died bitter. Don't expect anything from that side." The endorsement said otherwise. Daniel opened another folder. "This is the Henry Morgan Revocable Trust, restated in 2008 and made irrevocable after his death. It names you as the sole beneficiary of certain protected assets." I stared at the words until they stopped looking like English. What assets? A lake house outside Fairmont, West Virginia. 7.5 acres, a detached workshop, mineral rights he refused to sell, and liquid funds currently totaling approximately $186,000. I laughed once, but it came out broken. Yesterday, I had been counting granola bars in a church basement. Now a lawyer was telling me I owned a house near a lake. "There was a condition," Daniel said. Of course there was. I looked at him. "You could not take possession while residing in your parents' home or while they controlled your income. Henry also authorized emergency support if you were forced out before the transfer could be completed." The anger hit so fast I almost stood up. "So he watched me struggle?" Daniel did not defend him immediately. That made me listen. "Henry believed that if you received anything while under Susan's roof, you would give it to her, or she would convince you it was selfish not to." His handwritten instruction said, "Claire saves everyone else before she checks whether she is bleeding. Give her what is hers only when she is finally forced to save herself." I hated him for that. And I loved him for seeing me that clearly. Both things were true. Daniel gave me the keys 2 days later. The lake house sat at the end of a narrow gravel road, half hidden by bare trees and winter fog. It was smaller than I expected. White siding, green shutters, a screened porch sagging slightly on one side. Inside, everything smelled like cedar, dust, and closed-up winters. There was a quilt folded over the back of the couch, a workbench in the kitchen with screwdrivers laid in perfect order. On the mantel sat a photograph of me at 8 years old, missing both front teeth, holding a sparkler on the 4th of July. I didn't remember him taking it. Daniel opened a small, fireproof safe in the bedroom closet. Inside were more documents, a sealed letter, and a little silver recorder wrapped in a handkerchief. He looked at it, then at me. "I think you should hear this alone." So I sat on the edge of my grandfather's bed and pressed play. His voice came out thin and scratchy, but real. "Claire, if you're hearing this, then I was right, and I am sorry for that." I covered my mouth. He told me he had never abandoned me. He said my mother had returned his letters with notes telling him I wanted nothing from him. He said she and Ryan had come to him in 2006 with papers giving them authority over his property because, according to them, he was becoming confused. "I was old," he said. "I was grieving. I was not incompetent." When he refused, my mother stopped visits. My father stopped calling. And I disappeared from his life behind a locked family door. Then Daniel handed me the letter that hurt worse than all of it. It was from my father. Dad's handwriting was shaky, but unmistakable. "Henry, I know Susan is wrong to keep Claire from you. I know about the checks. I know Ryan has used some of the money. I should have stopped it. But if I confront her, I lose the house, the marriage, maybe my son.
Claire is strong. She will survive this. Please don't make me choose. I folded the letter very carefully because if I moved too fast, I was afraid I would tear it in half. Claire is strong. That was how cowards justified leaving weight on my back. My father had known. He had watched me pay his bills with money they had already stolen from me once. That night, I slept in the lake house under my grandfather's quilt, with the recorder on the nightstand and the 63 envelopes stacked beside me like witnesses. For the first time in years, no one called my name from another room. No one needed water. No one needed medicine. No one needed my debit card. At 8:12 the next morning, my phone rang. Mom. I let it ring until it stopped. Then she called again. And again. On the fourth call, I answered. Her voice was warm. Too warm. Claire, sweetheart, we need to talk. I said nothing. We heard about the lake house. The speed of that sentence frightened me more than the words themselves. The deed had not even been transferred into my name yet. The room went still. I had told no one except Daniel. She continued, gentle as poison. This family has been through enough. Your father's condition is worse. Ryan is under terrible pressure. And that property really belongs to all of us in spirit. Your grandfather would never want you living there alone while we struggle. I looked at the stack of unopened envelopes. How did you hear about it? A pause, then, that isn't important. But it was. It meant someone had searched Henry's estate. Someone had known enough to look. Someone had been waiting for the condition to trigger. We're having dinner tomorrow, she said. A real family meeting. Come to Ryan's restaurant at 6. We can decide what to do with the house and the money. There's nothing to decide. Her voice hardened for half a second, then softened again. Claire, don't make the same mistake your grandfather did. Don't choose property over family. I almost laughed. They had left me homeless 3 days before Christmas, and now I was the one choosing property. Before I could answer, she added, And bring Daniel Brooks. If he's advising you, he should hear what we all have to say. That was her second mistake, because Daniel was already standing in the doorway with 2 folders in his hand. The first was labeled, Suspicious Transfers, Morgan Family Account. The second contained a county property search submitted 6 weeks earlier by Patricia Vale. My mother had not discovered the lake house after I inherited it. Someone had been looking for it before they put my belongings in the snow. I arrived at Ryan's restaurant at 5:58 with Daniel Brooks beside me and my grandfather's recorder in my coat pocket. Morgan's table was closed for the night, but the lights were on and the bar was polished like they were expecting investors. My mother sat at the largest booth with Ryan, my aunts Linda and Carol, and a woman in a cream blazer I recognized from the real estate sign that had never gone up in our yard. Patricia Vale, Realtor. In front of my empty chair was a neat stack of papers. That told me everything. Claire, Mom said, smiling like she hadn't left me in the snow. You came. I said I would. Ryan didn't stand. He looked tired, bloated, and angry in a shirt with his restaurant logo embroidered over his heart. Can we not make this dramatic? Daniel pulled out the chair for me, then sat down without being invited. My mother's smile thinned. This is a family matter. It became a legal matter when you asked my client to discuss trust property, Daniel said. The room went quiet for the first time. I looked at the papers. A listing agreement for the lake house, a proposed family repayment plan,
a typed caregiver schedule with my name written in every weekday box. And at the bottom, a rental application for a 4-bedroom house in Pittsburgh.
My name was already filled in as the primary tenant. They had prepared an entire future for me. The only thing missing was my consent. Ryan tapped the table.
Nobody is trying to take anything from you. We're trying to be practical.
Practical, I repeated. Mom folded her hands. Your father needs care. Ryan has creditors calling. The house is too far away for you to live alone. If we sell it, we can pay down what matters and start over together. You threw me out 3 days before Christmas. Her eyes flicked toward my aunt's. You were being asked to become independent, with my belongings in the snow. Aunt Linda sighed. Claire, families fight, but money changes people. Don't let an old man's bitterness turn you selfish. That was when I opened Daniel's first folder. Not fast, not angry. Just one page at a time. The shared family account, I said. My direct deposit went there for 37 months. From January 2021 through December 2023, my wages covered mortgage drafts, utilities, medical bills, restaurant vendor payments, and transfers to Ryan. Ryan's face changed. Mom reached for her water. I slid the first statement into the center of the table. $43,812 went from that account to Morgan's table or directly to Ryan. Ryan laughed once.
That's not stolen. That was family support.
I never agreed to support your restaurant.
You agreed when you kept depositing the checks.
I deposited them because Mom told me Dad's therapy bills were overdue.
My mother snapped. Your father's care was expensive.
Daniel placed another document down.
This is the home equity loan taken out 6 weeks ago, he said. $81,000. The stated purpose was medical modification and long-term care. But the first disbursement went to a restaurant equipment lender.
Then he placed the county record beside it.
And the Pittsburgh house was never sold. There was no closing. There was only this loan.
I looked at my mother. The lie she had used to put me on the sidewalk was now sitting between us in black ink. Patricia Vale slowly leaned back. She had not known that part. Daniel opened the second folder. This property search was submitted through Ms. Vale's office 6 weeks ago, he said. It identified a recorded deed held by the Henry Morgan Trust. Whether anyone understood the trust conditions at that point is a question we can address later. Patricia's face lost its color. My mother did not look surprised. That was all the answer I needed. Mom's voice went sharp. We don't have to explain our finances to you. No, I said. You don't. But you don't get mine either. Ryan shoved the listing agreement toward me. Sign the papers, Claire. Sell the lake house. You can keep some money if that makes you feel better. I looked at him. For years, I had answered every family emergency like a 911 line. No judgment, no delay, just response. But that night, I finally let the call go unanswered. No. The word landed harder than shouting would have. Mom stared at me. Excuse me? No, I'm not selling Henry's house. I'm not paying Ryan's debts. I'm not renting a bigger place so I can become Dad's nurse, driver, cook, and bank again. Her face hardened into something I recognized from childhood. The look she used before consequences. If you walk away from us now, Claire, you no longer have a family. Before I could answer, Ryan's phone rang on the table. He looked down, annoyed. Then his face went pale. It's Mercy Hospital. My father had suffered another stroke. Everything after that moved in cold, bright pieces. The drive back to Pittsburgh,
The hospital smell. My mother crying loudly at the nurse's station while giving instructions like she owned the building. "She works in emergency services," Mom told the discharge coordinator the next afternoon, pointing at me. "She understands medical care. He can go with her to West Virginia. She has a house now." I stood beside the conference table with Daniel on my left and a social worker named Marlene Cho on my right. "I do not consent to being the discharge plan," I said. My mother turned slowly. "Claire," I kept my voice level, "I will help coordinate Dad's care. I will visit. I will speak with doctors. But he is not moving into my house, and I am not providing full-time care." Marlene nodded and wrote it down. That pen stroke was the sound of a chain breaking. 2 days later, Dad was transferred to a rehabilitation center in Wexford. Clean, reputable, not perfect, but real care from trained people. I paid nothing up front. Daniel helped confirm insurance coverage and long-term options. My mother called it abandonment. Dad called it something else. He could barely speak by then. His right hand shook when he reached for mine. I leaned close, expecting him to ask me to forgive her, to help Ryan, to come home. Instead, he forced out 3 words. Henry was right. Then he pressed a small brass key into my palm. A safe deposit key. The box was at a PNC branch on Liberty Avenue. Daniel came with me. Inside were bank statements, copies of checks, and a yellow envelope labeled Claire in my father's handwriting. He had kept everything. Transfers from my paycheck to Ryan, notes from Mom, a copy of an email where she wrote, "Claire never checks statements. She trusts me." Then I found a second printed email sent to Ryan 11 days before they changed the locks. "Patricia says the lake property is still tied to Henry's trust. Brooks can release it once Claire is no longer living under our roof. Get her out first. Once Dad needs care, she'll sell. She always gives in when it's about him." I read it twice. They had not thrown me out because they were tired of supporting me. They had thrown me out to trigger the trust. The snow, the bins, the changed lock, the missing stocking, none of it had been impulsive. It had been leverage. I sat in that little bank room under fluorescent lights and felt the last soft part of my denial die. My father had been weak, but not blind. He had saved evidence he never had the courage to use. Through Daniel, I sent my mother and Ryan one letter. Not a threat, a formal civil demand. Return $30,000 within 90 days. Sign a full release acknowledging they had no claim to Henry Morgan's trust, the lake house, the land, or any future income from it. Stop contacting my employer, my bank, and Daniel's office. The older checks involved missing records and limitation issues. $30,000 was the amount Daniel believed we could recover quickly without spending years in court. The letter also stated that I reserved every civil remedy concerning the remaining funds and altered endorsements. Daniel was careful about the wording. Repayment could settle the financial dispute. No one was buying my silence about a possible crime. Ryan called me selfish. Mom called me cruel. Patricia sent Daniel a written statement saying she had never been told why they wanted the property search. Then my mother and Ryan's attorney called Daniel and asked where to send the first payment. That was the part nobody posted on Facebook. No screaming courtroom, no dramatic arrest, just signatures, deadlines, and my mother discovering that paperwork could be louder than tears. I kept the lake house. In March, I moved in for good. I painted the kitchen pale yellow, fixed the screened porch, and put my dispatcher certification above the small desk facing the water. The 63 envelopes stayed in the cedar box on the mantel, not as a shrine, as proof. I still visited my father every Sunday, not because I owed him my life, Because I chose the parts of love that did not require me to disappear. My mother stopped speaking to me after the second repayment check cleared. Ryan closed the restaurant that summer and took a manager job across town. Aunt Linda sent one text that said, "This went too far." I deleted it without answering. On the inside of my front door, I hung Henry's final note in a simple black frame. Real love never asks you to become homeless just to prove your loyalty. Every morning before work, I passed that sentence with my keys in my hand. And every night I came home to a door only I could open. Family should never be a place where your usefulness matters more than your safety. Generosity is not permission. Loyalty is not a lease someone can cancel when you stop paying. The truth did not need to shout. It had already been filed. If this story made you think of someone who was expected to save everyone but herself, tell me what you would have done in my place. And if you want more stories about quiet people finally choosing themselves, subscribe and stay with me.